Chapter 15, Section 1, page 441. Growing tensions between North and South. The main idea: disagreements between the North and the South, especially over the issue of slavery, led to political conflict. Why it matters now. Regional differences can make national problems difficult to resolve. The terms and names: Wilmot Proviso, Free Soil Party, Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, Stephen A. Douglas, Compromise of 1850. One European story. Alexis de Tocqueville was a young French government official from a wealthy family. In 1831, he set out to study American prisons and politics. At one point, Tocqueville traveled in a steamship down the Ohio River. The river was the border between Ohio, a free state, and Kentucky, a slave state. Tocqueville noted that what he saw on both sides of the river. A voice from the past. The state of Ohio is separated from Kentucky just by one river. On either side of it, the soil is equally fertile and the situation equally favorable, and yet everything is different. Here on the Ohio side, a population devoured by feverish activity, trying every means to make its fortune. There on the Kentucky side are people who make others work for them and show little compassion, a people without energy, mettle, or the spirit of enterprise. These differences cannot be attributed to any other cause but slavery. It degrades the black population and enervates or saps the energy of the white. Tocqueville's comment was aimed not at the Southern people as individuals, but as the system of slavery itself. In this section, you will read about the differences between the North and the South. You will also learn how slavery led to political tensions that threatened to tear the nation apart. North and South take different paths. As you read in Chapter 11, the economics of the North and the South developed differently in the early 1800s. Although both economies were mostly agricultural, the North began to develop more industry and commerce. By contrast, the Southern economy relied on plantation farming. The growth of industry in the North helped lead to the rapid growth of northern cities. Much of this population growth came from immigration. In addition, immigrants and Easterners moved west and built farms in the new states formed from the Northwest Territory. Most canals and railroads ran east and west, helping the eastern and Midwestern states develop strong ties with each other. The South developed differently than the North. A few wealthy planters controlled Southern society. They made great profits from the labor for their slaves. Much of this profit came from trade. Planters relied on exports, especially cotton. Because these plantations were so profitable, planters invested in slaves instead of industry. As a result, the South developed little industry. Most Southern whites were poor farmers who owned no slaves. But even many of the non-slave holding whites supported slavery because it kept them off the bottom of society. If you look to the top of the page here, we have economics and history, trade. Trade is based on a simple idea. If you have something someone else needs or wants, and that person has something you need or want, you exchange or trade those two things. After the trade, you should both be better off than before. The concept of trade works similarly for groups of people. For example, in the early 1800s, the South had few factories. Planters who wanted manufactured goods usually had to buy them from manufacturers in the North or in Europe. To have the cash to buy those goods, Southerners sold other goods, such as cotton, to the North and other countries. Each sold the goods they could produce in order to get money to buy the goods they could not make. So we have Southern states and Northern states and other countries. Back down to the page 442, anti-slavery and racism. The issue of slavery caused tension between the North and the South. In the North, the anti-slavery movement had slowly been gaining strength since the 1830s. Abolitionists believed that slavery was unjust and should be abolished immediately. Many Northerners who opposed slavery took a less extreme position. Some Northern workers and immigrants opposed slavery because it was an economic threat to them. Because slaves did not work for pay, free workers feared that managers would employ slaves rather than them. Some workers were even afraid that the expansion of slavery might force workers into slavery to find jobs. Despite their opposition to slavery, most Northerners, even abolitionists, were racist by modern standards. Many whites refused to go to school with, work with, or live near African Americans. In most states, even free African Americans could not vote. When Northern attacks on slavery increased, slaveholders defended slavery. Most offered the openly racist argument that white people were superior to blacks. Many also claimed that slavery helped slaves by introducing them to Christianity, as well as providing them with food, clothing, and shelter throughout their lives. Slaveholders were determined to defend slavery and their way of life. In this way, the different ideas about slavery brought the North and the South into conflict. The Wilmot Proviso. After the Missouri Compromise in 1820, political disagreements over slavery seemed to go away, but new disagreements arose with the outbreak of the war with Mexico in 1846. Many Northerners believed that Southerners wanted to take territory from Mexico in order to extend slavery. To prevent that, Representative David Wilmot of Pennsylvania proposed a bill, known as the Wilmot Proviso, to outlaw slavery in any territory the United States might acquire from the war with Mexico. But slaveholders believed that Congress had no right to prevent them from bringing slaves into any of the territories. They viewed slaves as property. The Constitution, they claimed, gave equal protection to the property rights of all U.S. citizens. The Wilmot Proviso removed the right of slaveholders to take their slaves, which they regarded as property, anywhere in the United States or its territories. Southerners claimed that the bill was unconstitutional. The Wilmot Proviso divided Congress along regional lines. The bill passed the House of Representatives, but Southerners prevented it from passing the Senate. Even though the Wilmot Proviso never became a law, it had important effects. It led to the creation of the Free Soil Party, a political party dedicated to stopping the expansion of slavery. The party's slogan expressed its ideas: free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. The Free Soil Party won more than 10 seats in Congress in the election of 1848. More important, the party made slavery a key issue in national politics. Politicians could ignore slavery no longer. Controversy over territories. By 1848, the nation's leaders had begun to debate how to deal with slavery in the lands gained from the war with Mexico. The proposed addition of the new states threatened the balance in Congress between North and South. The discovery of gold in California brought thousands of people into that territory. There would soon be enough people in California for it to apply for statehood. Most California residents wanted their state to be a free state, but this would tip the balance of power clearly in favor of the North. Southerners wanted to divide California in half, making the northern half a free state and the southern half a slave state. In 1849, President Zachary Taylor, who opposed the extension of slavery, proposed that California submit a plan for statehood that year without going through the territorial stage. Taylor's plan gave Southern slaveholders little time to move to California with their slaves. In March 1850, California applied to be admitted as a free state. With California as a free state, slave states would become a minority in the Senate, just as they were in the House. Jefferson Davis, a senator from Mississippi, warned, "For the first time, we are about permanently to destroy the balance of power between the sections." The Compromise of 1850. California could not gain statehood, however, without the approval of Congress, and Congress was divided over the issue. Behind the scenes, statesmen sought compromise. Taking the lead was Senator Henry Clay. Our picture at the bottom of 444. There's a bubble on the left. This engraving dramatically portrays the Senate debate over the Compromise of 1850. Henry Clay led the Congress in creating compromises on several important issues during his long career. John C. Calhoun of South Carolina opposed the Compromise of 1850. He believed the South had no reason to compromise on the issue of slavery. Daniel Webster spoke eloquently in favor of the compromise. Page 445. So we had taken the lead with Senator Henry Clay of Kentucky. Clay had helped create the Missouri Compromise in 1820. Now Clay crafted a plan to settle the California problem. Number 1. To please the North, California would be admitted as a free state, and the slave state would be abolished in Washington, D.C. To please the South, Congress would not pass laws regarding slavery for the rest of the territories won from Mexico, and Congress would pass a stronger law to help slaveholders recapture runaway slaves. Many people on both sides felt they had to give up too much in this plan, but others were tired of the regional bickering. They wanted to hold the Union together. Daniel Webster, a senator from Massachusetts, supported the compromise for the sake of the Union. A voice from the past. I wish to speak today not as a Massachusetts man, nor as a Northern man, but as an American. I speak today for the preservation of the Union. Hear me for my cause. The joy of winning passage of the plan fell to Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois. By the end of September, Douglas seceded, and the plan, now known as the Compromise of 1850, became law. Some people celebrated the compromise, believing that it had saved the Union, but the compromise would not bring peace. In the next section, you will learn how sectional tensions continued to rise. On the right, Stephen A. Douglas. Stephen A. Douglas was one of the most powerful members of Congress in the mid-1800s. In fact, he was called the Little Giant because he commanded great respect, even though he was only 5 feet 4 inches tall. Perhaps the most important issue that Douglas faced during his career was the expansion of slavery into the territories. Douglas privately hated slavery, but he did not believe a debate on morality would do any good. He suggested that people of each territory should decide whether or not to allow slavery.